Are value judgments a fault in the writing of history? First, let us clarify the keyword value judgments. The dictionary said, presupposing the acceptance of a particular set of values. Interpreting this as literal as possible, we concluded that because the value-laden terms implied hidden values other than its dictionary definition, one must use such terms only under the premise that he agrees to the values the word holds. These implied values vary depending on what event it's designating. Avoidance deprive history of meaning. We know that learning from history is essential in our lives. But what is history? John Steinbeck said that it is the product of bodily excretions of historians. But how do they excrete history? They translate existing facts and make valuable lesson out of it. History is generated from facts. Within that process, they take some facts to value those as they judge that it is important when learning the message from them. This is, for example, there's the fact millions of Jewish people died under Nazi control. Why do we treat the Jewish people mentioned here as the innocent victims? Because historians valued other facts such as the reason of killing of the Jews was out of obsessive hatred. Nazis brutally treated them to death, or dead Jews included children who have no reason to die in vain and valued that Nazi killing Jews was a wrongful thing. Now a fact became history. This means history and value-laden terms are necessarily connected, so there's just no way of avoiding value-laden terms if you want to discuss history. Now, facts are objective and history is subjective because everyone comes up with their own versions of history over one incident with their own perspectives. This makes value terms have full potential to be interpreted biased by the audience. Given this point, value judgments are arguably a fault in writing history as it may ignore a side's view because the value they prioritize is different from others. For example, a value-laden term's ready is a derogatory term indicating their left wings. Why it became so, an explanation could be April 3rd incident. Korean regime, in order to eliminate Jeju people who are against their will, called them lefties readies, which only exaggerated that they were an obstinate anti-national riot against democracy, but no value of horrible violence oppression they received from the government for that reason. So, ready is a biased term. Nonetheless, such examples are very few, and most value-laden terms still contain essential bits that needs to be considered as all value terms are fact-based. Like Holocaust and April 3rd incident has the fact that numerous people suffered. If we try to use massive killing instead, Holocaust would be just a simple tragedy, the fault of Germans less valued compared to Holocaust, which isn't the actual case. Not only that, the usage of value-laden terms represent the user's value. Not using them at all would mean to ignore these fundamental facts and disagree with the views of the user. Holocaust contains all the values of how and to which degree Jewish people were suppressed by the Nazis. Say, if we ban the word Holocaust, it is ignoring the agreement that we should value the facts of how the Jewish race were forced to work 12 hours with less than 1,800 calories a day at an unsanitary condition where fatal diseases were rife under mental, physical, sexual abuse. The fact that children, elderly, and patients were immediately sent to be gassed. The victims included homosexuals, asocials, Catholics, gypsies, and disabled, as well as Jews. That this was continued for years unknown to the outside. Using value-laden terms mean to accept faults and take responsibility of the event or meaning of the word implies of. So, some perspectives would use an indirect term or just not mention it at all to avoid the responsibility. Korean government tried to conceal the incident as they never gave a proper name nor mentioned it in school textbooks. Given that, clearly avoiding value terms is morally wrong. Of course, some people would accept their faults in that case using the value-laden terms. Take a look at Chancellor Merkel and President Roman's apologies to the victims of fault in history. Germany authored education discussing Holocaust 3 times in high school. Chancellor also consistently visits memorial halls related to Holocaust and expresses the shame and guilt for Germany's faults. President Rohr gave an official apology in remembrance of April 3rd incident victims, taking responsibility of the government's authority abuse. The value-laden terms are technically the best terms that represent the event, since those values are what we agreed necessary to value and use them as the way to interpret the incident. If people keep on using different words to cover up something else, it'll be simplifying purifying, altering, at extreme degree distorting the historical meaning of the indicating event, due to the values in the term being hidden by the meaning of the words used instead. This denying the definition of the value-laden term, which is basically our logic of remembering the incident, is contradicting ourselves. From what we discussed, we cannot avoid using value-laden terms, but we debate whether using them is appropriate. That's why it's important to clarify the reasoning for using value-laden terms, or else any misleading element is left unresolved, creating a misunderstanding. Also, some value-laden terms may not properly reflect certain perspectives, but we have to embrace that as a spontaneous thing because, as mentioned at the start, building history and creation of value-laden terms are very related. All we can do is to understand the usage or its perspective, and together we can cultivate a valued judgments that covers as many perspectives as possible. This will even enable the objectivity in history.